the Ellen situation.
Yeah.
You know, people found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen's actually a and they were like, whoa, I can't believe it. And she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was. My buddy Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a piece of shit. And he was like, she's a monster.
On camera, she laughed while she badgered her staff. And so all good things must end. And also the Ellen DeGeneres show. Yes, the 83-year-old entertainer just announced that the upcoming 19th season of her show will be its last. Apparently, she created a workplace more toxic than an Amazon warehouse in Chernobyl.
Ellen DeGeneres felt she was dancing was sufficient to conceal the truth through awkward interviews until Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld were tagged as caffeine-fueled wrecking balls at a daytime TV demolition derby. 1 minute, she's America's sweetheart wearing sneakers. And the next, she's being called out more forcefully than a Hollywood stunt double with stage fright. What sinister secrets did Ellen uncover beneath that immaculate studio rug? This expose makes her TikTok dances appear to be reenactments of crime scenes.
Beautiful name, Isis.
Ellen's rough.
Ellen is like an old.
But it's a rough one now.
It's a rough one now because she was running Abu Ghraib in the back of her show. That's a rough one. She's out there dancing with Kristen Bell, and in the back, there's people that are getting up on the rack like this.
It's so weird when you see, like, a lot of people saying that someone who seems so nice is not nice at all.
She does. Countless allegations surfaced last summer that the show's work environment was rife with harassment and discrimination. Following those charges, Ellen's ratings dropped faster than Kevin Spacey's pants at a boy band.
According to reports, Ellen DeGeneres, the woman who previously advised us to be kind before running her talk show as though it were a boot camp for emotional collapse, knew that the key to winning over America's hearts was yelling at interns until their souls coiled up like salted slugs.
Out of show business. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, because I'm mean. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be mean and be in show business. No, they'll kick you out.
But worry not, America, because Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld have unofficially declared war on daytime delusion. One has a podcast that is essentially the internet's man cave, and the other is Fox News's attempt at humor while wearing loafers. Together, they have tuned their finely tuned snark detectors toward Ellen DeGeneres, and the results are, well, let's just say, that the sparkle of that pastel set is beginning to resemble the fluorescence in a DMV.
She doesn't seem nice, but that people have a very poor judge of character. She doesn't seem nice. It seems forced. People that are like that all the time, she doesn't seem nice. It's very forced. And whatever, you're allowed to be a bitch, right? You're allowed to be a bitch. You're allowed to be nasty to people. You're accomplished. You're a comedian. You did the whole thing. What you're not allowed to do is have a Guantanamo Bay situation in the backstage of your show where everybody's walking around afraid.
Ellen was the queen of nice until people realized that being nice apparently meant ignoring her steep-forward wife. The stories are legendary. Avoid looking Ellen in the eyes. Avoid talking to her unless she speaks to you. And even then, hope that you're not disturbing her as she looks inward and replenishes her soul. Ironically, interns were supposedly treated like background furniture, even though the majority of them likely had more personality than the set's fake plants.
DeGeneres, bails for the UK. All right. I'm going to go to you first, Kat, because this is such I think you understand this story. So Ellen and her wife, Portia, have left their millionaire haven of Montecito for England. Now, they're saying they'll never come back in the wake of Trump's win. Do you think that's the reason why she's leaving?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, Ellen got canceled for real a few years ago from just being a jerk.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like a single comment she said or something she did, just lots of people saying that working for her was a living nightmare and that she's a jerk. And I think that's probably why she wants to leave, because she hasn't really been able to make a comeback.
Rogan, who interviews astronauts, conspiracy theorists, and professional bear wrestlers, was enthralled with stories of celebrity psychodrama involving vegan finger-pointing and scented candle tyranny when he learned about this. Naturally, Gutfeld was right there with him, chewing through the hypocrisy like it was a gluten-free cake Ellen had just thrown at an assistant for forgetting the almond milk.
made progress with the strike?
They're picketing right now, so I think it's the early stages. I would think it might take a little bit with this one.
When someone crosses the writer strike, that's some dirty shit. They cross the picket line.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody doing that yet.
I think Ellen did. I had a buddy of mine who was writing on Ellen. Everybody kind of knows now what she's really all about. And that's another one of those. Like, press. I'm so nice and I'm so sweet. Being behind the scenes.
To be honest, Ellen's whole business was based on the notion of sympathetic eccentricity. She danced, gave away toasters, and gave Middle America the impression that their Target cashier might be a hero in secret. But let's just say that the Wicked, which had her Yelp evaluations, former workers whispered stories as if they were trying out for a Netflix documentary called Toxic Work Environment. That term doesn't even come close to describing what sounds like a psychological escape room masquerading as a talk show set. Roger, who has hosted everyone from Neil deGrasse Tyson to guys who enjoy eating raw liver for fun, was reportedly perplexed that someone with a reputation for being happy could allegedly make working in a salt mine seem like a spa retreat. He's interviewed MMA fighters with greater compassion than what some claim transpired in Ellen's green room. And Gutfeld, well, he's been waiting for this moment like a golden retriever at a squirrel convention. Fox News Giggle Fest is similar to using jazz hands to dismantle a liberal symbol.
Why I was quitting, I would have not come back this year. I really did think about not coming back because it did, it was devastating. I am a kind person. I am a person who likes to make people happy.
No, the real reason, she says, is it was just too easy. Telling the Hollywood Reporter, quote, when you're a creative person, you constantly need to be challenged. And as great as this show is, and as fun as it is, it's just not a challenge anymore. Well, if that's true, here's an idea. When your viewership is down 43%, why not consider that?
That's not kindness. It's HR horror with a bull cut and a blinding smile. Yes, we're talking about the same Ellen who once gave a speech to the public about compassion while allegedly firing people for taking medical leave. It's the kind of contradiction that even Greg Gutfeld, in between arrogant monologues, pauses to say, you know what, maybe the be kind mantra should include not throwing staplers at people's heads. Then there was the entire I'm friends with George W. Bush incident, which devastated her fan base. Ellen, who stood for progressive wholesomeness, seems to have lost her way on the wrong golf course and opted to co-sign the Iraq War for fun. Witnessing Ellen laugh with the man who started 2 wars was like witnessing a vegan make out with a hamburger. Naturally, Roger didn't miss a beat. This is a man who has questioned scientists about quantum mechanics while they are barefoot for him. Hollywood liberals are caught enjoying the company of Republicans. It was like Christmas, but with more passive aggression and much worse dancing. Ellen's tactful brunch with Bush was the equivalent of a UFC fighter requesting that the referee pause so he could sign a treaty. And Gutfeld most likely threw a parade in his own mind.
When you become successful, you have to spend less time with people around you because you're servicing, take Ellen DeGeneres, she's servicing millions of people in her show. Therefore, she has to kind of like mitigate or control the amount of exposure with actual real people. Does that make sense?
It does in theory. But when you, but I'm still always hanging out on the street and I'm super famous. But all these reports, there were so many of them, of people being like, multiple people had the same story of her handlers before an interview or anything with her would come up and say, don't.
Ellen attempted to justify it by claiming that she is friends with everyone, which is cute. But when your definition of a friend includes people who believe that empathy is a weakness that isn't friendship but rather emotional hoarding, you know you've officially crossed into territory that may be yours. Let's not forget the apology tour that followed the allegations about her show going viral. In front of a room full of staff members who are likely calculating how many more months of silent suffering it would take them to pay off their student loans, Ellen delivered a well-rehearsed non-apology. It was the kind of performance that made even soap opera stars clutch their pearls and mutter, "Wow, that was forced." In the meantime, Rogan was probably reclining back in his sensory deprivation tank mumbling, "This is why I only trust chimps and comedians," while Gutfeld was nearly performing cartwheels at the irony that his fantasy headline was "Daytime Darling Melts Down in Public Scandal." Because nothing really conveys reliability like someone who views compassion as a marketing tactic rather than a genuine personality feature.
The Today Show, home of Matt Lauer, that the bad press actually had nothing to do with her decision. Right, and the Titanic didn't hit an iceberg. It chose
There's something really satisfying about seeing America realize that Ellen's smile might have been less sunshine in a bottle and more hostage in a toothpaste commercial. The image was perfect, the vibe was impeccable, but the reality was more like if Willy Wonka had operated on passive aggression and expensive matcha. Not to mention how she would begin every show by dancing through the audience, arms flailing hips, vaguely remembering the beat, and everyone would cheer as if she had just cured boredom. However, backstage, that same group of applauding extras might have just been reprimanded for breathing too loudly close to the dressing room. It would be like dancing through a burning building while shouting, "Everything's fine." And if you don't think Gutfeld roasted that contrast into oblivion, you don't know him. He pointed out that Ellen's empire of joy had more cracks than a sidewalk in an earthquake zone, most likely while grinning like a gremlin on espresso. Joe just laughed because, of course, he did when you host a show where people debate cryogenics and eat elk art. This Thursday, Ellen's PR meltdown is just another one.
Emily, I watched her comedy special. Mm-hmm. It was like a huge pity party. It was about how she was lamenting how her reputation has suffered. She's essentially as popular as a pit bull with monkeypox. But she's putting this on Trump. Do you think that she's going to be, just everybody's going to love her in England?
Especially the jihadis who love the lesbians so much. They're going to love her there.
It was like trying to glue together a piñata after the party, where everyone had already seen the candy fall out, and now you're just flailing with paper and your machete in front of a disappointed crowd. The best part is that the more Ellen tried to fix it, the worse it got. She hired new producers, gave another heartfelt speech, and tried to regain the nice lady throne. Rogan probably compared it to psychedelic ego death, but with less enlightenment and more lawsuits because nothing screams spiritual rebirth like losing credibility on live television. Gutfeld had a field day comparing it to the fall of Rome if Rome wore Converse and forced celebrities to play charades for charity. Oh, and let's not forget about the famous visitors. While some of them most likely deserved the cold treatment, others appeared to be blinking. Between stage surprise handouts and phony chuckles, use Morse code for assistance. Like Regina, Ellen had a way of grinning while dissecting you. If she had an Emmy, George after sparring with Mike Tyson and leaving with all of his teeth, Rogan famously said, "Nope, too dangerous," and Gutfeld, after watching videos of Ellen making fun of visitors in the name of light-hearted banter. He expressed what everyone else was thinking. Ellen would be dismissed more quickly than you could say, "dance break," if she wore a red hat and had a mustache.
It was St. Patrick's Day, and Ellen asked me to dress as a leprechaun and come out on stage. And this is where, if you're wondering the low point of my career.
When you say she asked me, you're like, this is not a request.
It wasn't a request. I had to do it.
Yeah. You're doing this.
When you make an employee get in a leprechaun outfit and he's Irish, that's just cruel. That's racism.
Yeah.
I think that, why wouldn't that be? Think about other races. Would you have taken a Chinese employee on the Chinese New Year and put him in one of those big pagoda hats and made him dance to gong music?
Even Ellen's attempts at humor grew stale like milk left on a sun porch. What had begun as light-hearted banter began to take the form of winking microaggressions. It's not funny if the audience pauses before laughing. It's just a Mean Girls theater with pastel upholstery. And you know somewhere Greg Gutfeld is nodding while polishing his told you so mug because for years he's been waiting for the moment when one of Hollywood's high priests of morality was exposed for treating kindness like a performance instead of a principle. This was his Super Bowl, minus the athletes and a lot more smugness. In the meantime, Rogan, ever the perceptive observer, probably filed Ellen under things that appear innocent but bite right between kangaroos and multi-level marketing schemes because when your reputation collapses more quickly than your guests' fake reactions, it's probably time to reevaluate your life philosophy. Don't worry, Ellen's comeback attempts are equally delightfully cringeworthy. An innovative range of home items, an ambiguous podcast concept, perhaps a candle with an apologetic perfume that emanates shame and mild anxiousness. This is the traditional Hollywood redemption story. Deny, deflect, rebrand, repeat. Roger would prefer to gnaw on plasterboard rather than purchase throw pillows with the Ellen brand. Gutfeld, however, most likely purchased one merely to make fun of it on live. It smells like remorse and underpaid help. He would make a joke about how to manage a talk show while holding it up as a prop in court. Believe me when I say that Ellen's empire fell not because of a single error, but rather because of 1,000 meticulously planned genuine moments that were revealed to be as contrived as a reunion from a reality show. The dancing, the giveaways, the heartfelt surprises. All of these served as diversion from the slowly rotting foundation.
Coming back from this, Ellen DeGeneres has seemingly vanished from public life after years of dominating daytime television, leaving many wondering what really went on behind the scenes. Recently, Joe Rogan mentioned Greg Fitzsimmons, who was one of her former writers during a podcast, but what many people missed was Greg already opening up about his experiences working on the show in a previous interview, and let's just say it's not all rainbows and
Ellen DeGeneres made a living by acting like it was Christmas morning at an Apple shop every day. It's glitzy, artificial, and aggressively overhyped. But when you take off the candy-coated exterior, what do you think is a walking HR violation with a punchline? I hope your insurance covers emotional trauma, is the daytime TV equivalent of receiving a glitter bomb. This isn't America's darling. Instead of hosting a show, she conducted a psychological obstacle course while wearing a smile so tight it could cut through drywall. According to reports, staff members were unable to speak to her, look at her, or even be in her vicinity without setting off DEFCON 1, which isn't a workplace that's a cult save for the pastel robes and the oat milk Kool-Aid. Her dance moves were the visual equivalent of a dentist humming during a root canal. Before TikTok was even created, every time she shimmied across the stage, it was like a kitten losing its will to live like a malfunctioning car dealership balloon man. Strange, unnerving, and incredibly useless. As well as those famous interviews, Ellen smiled for the camera and greeted her visitors as though they were Survivor Public Disgrace Edition candidates. Pretend that this is enjoyable, and if you're lucky, you'll merely suffer emotional damage. If not, congratulations. The hashtag #WhyIsEllenSoMean is trending on Twitter. The only things more choreographed than her giveaways were the impromptu shocks that somehow called for 7 camera angles and a backup marching band. She wasn't eccentric, she was chaos and khakis. It turns out that she was the aunt who feeds you cookies and then yells at you for touching the nice towels, even though America believed she was their entertaining aunt. In a nutshell, Ellen is a high-production value facade of kindness built on a foundation of side eyes, cancelled interns, and unexpected public meltdowns. Rogan and Gutfeld simply assisted in pulling back the curtain and revealing that behind it is not a wizard but a bitter comedian in white sneakers with a master's degree in public manipulation. Go forth, America, and be kind, but not Ellen. Ellen didn't fall from grace. She tripped over her own ego and designer sneakers, and the sound of that crash was glorious.